Section 2, Chapter 6.12, Standards of Enclosures. Section 6.12.01, Definitions. 02, Location and Number. 03, Disinfection. 04, Enclosure Specifics and Animal Welfare. 05, Permits Required. 06, Inspection. 07, Enforcement. 08, Failure to Comply. 09, Penalty. 6.12.01, Definitions. The following words, terms, and phrases, when used in this article, shall have the meaning ascribed to them in this section, except where the context clearly indicates a different meaning. Disinfectant means a product recognized and marketed as a germicidal disinfectant compound. Domestic improvement means a dwelling patio, gazebo deck, hot tub, pool, or sauna. Enclosure means any enclosed area including buildings, fenced-in areas, pens, cages, and pastures. Domestic fowl means adult chicken, hens, pigeons, or quail. Hen means an adult female fowl. Chick means a fowl of unknown sex up to the age of 2 weeks. 6.12.02, Location and Number. Domestic fowl may be kept in the following locations subject to all other standards in this chapter. A, on a single household parcel or parcels. B, on a parcel or parcels under unitary ownership with more than one dwelling on site. C, on residential parcels under common ownership. 2, the number of domestic fowl authorized per permit shall comply with the following subject to all other standards in this chapter. A, for the first 1,600 square feet of any residential parcel, up to 4 chickens or 20 pigeons or quail. B, for each additional 1,000 square feet of a residential parcel, 2 additional hens or 2 pigeons or 2 quail, as long as a maximum of 10 hens or 25 pigeons or quail is not exceeded. The number of allowed domestic fowl is exclusive to each permit and may not overlap. This may restrict the number of permits issued on a given parcel. 6.12.03, Disinfected. Each enclosure wherein fowl are kept in the city shall be kept clean, sanitary, and regularly disinfected. 6.12.04, Enclosures and Animal Welfare. 1. No domestic fowl shall be allowed to run at large, that is, be free range within the corporate limits of the city of Eureka Springs. All domestic fowl must be contained within an enclosed area on the permitted property at all times. 2. The permittee shall provide the domestic fowl with a covered, predator-proof, adequately ventilated coop of sufficient size to allow free movement of the domestic fowl. The coop must be adjacent to and provide free access to the domestic fowl enclosure. Any heat source or electrical facilities installed in a domestic fowl coop must comply with all adopted building and electrical codes of the City of Eureka Springs and the Eureka Springs Historic District guidelines where applicable. 3. Standards for the size and location of domestic fowl enclosures. A. Coops shall be located within the normal setback requirements of the permitted property, except where written permission is obtained from an owner of vacant adjacent land to encroach on the side or rear boundary of permitted property. If such vacant land becomes inhabited or designated for any other domestic use, all standard setback provisions of this section shall be immediately in force and enclosures must be brought into compliance. Coops can be located in any portion of the permitted rear yard, but may not be located in the front yard, except under specific conditions, such as the prime structure being located at the extreme rear of the parcel. In such cases, any part of the domestic fowl enclosure must be located no less than 3 times the distance of the property front setback requirements. All other requirements of this ordinance shall remain intact. C. Enclosures for domestic fowl may be movable, but must comply with all standards of this section. 4. Domestic fowl enclosures shall be kept in good repair, maintained in a sanitary condition, free of vermin, obnoxious smells, and waste substances. Enclosures shall be constructed and maintained to prevent rodents from being harbored underneath, within, or within the walls of the enclosure and to prevent entrance by any other bird or animal. 5. Food and freshwater containers shall be kept in the coop with adequate access. 6. Leftover feed, trash, and manure shall be removed weekly. Stored food must be kept in a rodent and predator-proof container. 7. Domestic fowl shall be maintained in a healthy condition. Ill domestic fowl shall either receive appropriate medical care or be disposed of in a humane, legal manner. 6.12.05 Permits required. Prior to the keeping of any domestic fowl, an owner, operator, or custodian wanting to keep domestic fowl shall obtain a permit from the city clerk for the city of Eureka Springs. A permit fee of $10 will be due with the permit application. The permit fee may be revised from time to time by the City Council. Only one permit for a domestic fowl shall be issued per owner, operator, or custodian of a parcel of land. 1. The owner, operator, or custodian of the domestic fowl shall keep a copy of all signed approval documents for inspection upon request from an animal control officer or designee. 2. A permit for domestic fowl under this section does not relieve any party from any requirement to obtain any other permit or other necessary approvals for any structure, fence, lighting, heat source, etc., as required by the Eureka Springs Municipal Code. 3. The application shall contain the following: identify on a sketch the property boundaries, the location of all structures on the property, and distances between said structures and between the property boundaries. The sketch must also indicate the locations of the domestic fowl coop. B. The number of domestic fowl to be kept. C. A description of the enclosure or roofed coop, including materials used and square footage or footages. D. A statement that all information contained in the application is true and that the permit holder shall keep the domestic fowl in compliance with the terms of the permit application and ordinance number 2135. 4. Applicant requirements and responsibility. A. A permit to keep domestic fowl is specific to the permit holder and the location of the permit. A person wishing to move domestic fowl to a different property shall obtain a new permit. B. A new resident of a property who intends to keep domestic fowl shall obtain a new permit regardless of whether domestic fowl were kept on the property or continue to be kept on the property. C. Approval of a permit to keep domestic fowl authorizes a permit holder to keep the number of domestic fowl in the manner described on the application and permit. Any increase to the number of domestic fowl allowed or a significant change to the manner of keeping shall require a new permit. D. When the person seeking to keep domestic fowl is not the fee owner of the property upon which the domestic fowl will be kept, the applicant shall obtain property owner's consent in writing to keep domestic fowl on the property. The owner's consent shall be submitted with the permit application. For the purposes of this section, when a party seeks to keep domestic fowl on a property owned as a condominium, the consent of the property owners association must be obtained. An officer of the association may sign as the landowner. 6.12.06 Inspection. The animal control officer or designee is authorized to enter upon any premises, public or private, where a permit has been issued for the purpose of making inspections to determine the provisions of this article, if the provisions of this article are being violated. 6.12.07 Enforcement. If, upon inspection, the animal control officer or designee finds that the provisions of this article have not been or are not being complied with, he shall: A. Give written notice of noncompliance to the owner, possessor, or custodian of domestic fowl, and such owner, possessor, or custodian shall, within 30 days after the receipt of such notice, proceed to fully comply with the provisions of this article. B. If the noncompliance as notified is not corrected within 30-day allowance, a second notice to comply within 15 days shall be issued, and a reinspection fee of $25 shall be charged. C. If the second notice is not complied with and or the reinspection fee is not paid within 15 days, the 15 days allowed, a notice of permit revocation shall be issued, and the removal of all the domestic fowl shall be undertaken by the designated officer or their assignee. Failure to comply with this 15-day notice of noncompliance shall be considered a violation of this ordinance. Any expense incurred by the city for the removal of the domestic fowl under this provision may be levied against the permit holder or the said property owner. E, the issuance of 3 or more notices of noncompliance pertaining to this ordinance within any 12-month period to any owner, possessor, or custodian of domestic fowl shall be grounds for revocation of a permit to keep domestic fowl, and the owner, possessor, or custodian of such domestic fowl shall be in violation of this ordinance. Each attritional notice after the third notice within 12 months shall be a separate violation. F, a new permit shall not be issued to any person who has had a permit revoked until the passage of 1 year after such revocation, and only after payment of all fees for previous re-inspections and or violations. G, interference with the animal control officer and or his designee in performance of his duties with regard to this ordinance shall be a violation. 6.12.08 penalty. Any person convicted for a violation of this ordinance shall be adjudged to pay a fine of not more than $100 plus appropriate court costs for each violation. Section 3. All provisions of the ordinance of the City of Eureka Springs in conflict with the provisions of this ordinance are, and the same are hereby, repealed, and all other provisions of the ordinances of the City of Eureka Springs not in conflict with the provisions of this ordinance shall remain in full force and effect. Section 4. Severability. Should any sentence, paragraph, clause, phrase, or section of this ordinance be adjudged to be held unconstitutional, illegal, or invalid, the same shall not affect the validity of this ordinance as a whole or any part or provision thereof other than the part so declared to be invalid, illegal, or unconstitutional, and shall not affect the validity of the Eureka Springs Municipal Code as a whole.
Move to approve ordinance number 2135 on its first reading.
Motion approved on first reading. Is there a second? Made and seconded. Discussion. Fano?
Is the intent, I don't know if this is proper to discuss, they've rewritten the whole chapter 6.08 other animals. That has left out condition of stables, reptiles, references to, I don't know if it was intentional. Also, I would sure like to see if this is a complete rewrite of chapter 6.08. I don't want to offend anyone, but there seems to be an awful lot of underlining as an emphasis. It looks like it was because of changes versus what is being said. A lot of grammatical extra commas, references to an old code that I thought whenever you implemented a new ordinance into a new code that the code reference didn't have to be in there. This goes clear back to the Municipal Code 1978, 6.08.10 under 6.0803. I know it was a long thing to read, but it just seems like there's an awful lot of underlining, which seems very, I don't know what the intent was. I don't have a problem with the words. It's just cleaning up the writing.
Yes, Ms. Mellon?
I have an explanation for that. Where you're seeing underlining in paragraphs and so forth is where we had questions from the first draft, and these are corrections that we're seeing. So probably in the final draft, those underlinings will go away. And we've also talked about the superfluous punctuation and so forth. So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have a copy that is even cleaner than this one. And am I correct, Mr. Weaver?